There are 7,000 diagnoses in this country every year for people who are HIV positive, which is not a good place for any of them to be, I know. But 60% of them are not British nationals. You can come into Britain from anywhere in the world and get diagnosed with HIV and get the retroviral drugs that cost up to £25,000 per year per patient. I know there are some horrible things happening in many parts of the world, but what we need to do is to put the National Health Service there for British people and families who in many cases have paid into this system for decades.
Thank you. Leanne Wood.
This kind of scaremongering rhetoric is dangerous.
It's a fact.
It's dangerous, it divides communities and it creates stigma to people who are ill, and I think you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Well, I'm sorry, we've got to put our own people first. I mean, would you, Leanne, open it up to 17,000 people, 27,000 people?
The situation is Abdullah does not have any teeth. Has a story about it. So I've been trying to help him fix his teeth. But it's gonna cost me 14,000 and up to do it. He need denture, he need teeth implant. So when I told him, there is no way I can get you the money in one time because dentists need to get payment right away. And Western Union, usually, if I send them the money, they only allowed 1,000 at the time. Not under their name, of course. Has to be a third person to collect the money and give it to them. So I said to him, actually my dad, he came up with the idea. He said to me, I think if they go to Europe for his kids and for better future, I think you should do that. And then we'll see if we can fix his teeth. And that's what I decided 3 weeks ago.
I know there are some horrible things happening in many parts of the world, but what we need to do is to put the National Health Service there for British people and families who in many cases have paid into this system for decades.
Actually, my dad, he came up with the idea. He said to me, I think if they go to Europe for his kids and for better future, I think you should do that. And then we'll see if we can fix his teeth. And that's what I decided 3 weeks ago.
Thank you. Leanne Wood.
This kind of scaremongering rhetoric is dangerous.
It's a fact.
It's dangerous, it divides communities and it creates stigma to people who are ill, and I think you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Well, I'm sorry, we've got to put our own people first. I mean, would you, Leanne, open it up to 17,000 people, 27,000 people? The question is, how do we fund...
Do you hold the Canadian government responsible for this at all?
Yes.
Do you hold the Canadian government responsible for this at all?
Yes. Actually, my dad, he came up with the idea. He said to me, I think if they go to Europe for his kids and for better future, I think you should do that. And then we'll see if we can fix his teeth. And that's what I decided 3 weeks ago.
Do you hold the Canadian government responsible for this at all?
Yes.
But first, a couple are claiming that their 3 foster children were taken from them because of their membership of the UK Independence Party. Speaking to the Daily Telegraph, the husband and wife say a social worker and a fostering agency official told them UKIP's policies meant they were unsuitable to look after the 3 ethnic minority children. Well, in a statement, Rotherham Metropolitan Borough Council said, after a group of sibling children were placed with agency foster carers, issues were raised regarding the long-term suitability of the carers for these particular children. With careful consideration, a decision was taken to move the children to alternative care. We continue to keep the situation under review. Well, Rhiannon Mills is with us now on the sofa. And Rhiannon, we've been looking at this story all morning. We know that the couple are quite distressed about this. The children taken away with not much discussion or investigation.
And it is extraordinary when you think that this couple had been fostering children for around 7 years, around a dozen children they'd looked after. One of those children had stayed with them for 4 years. But when it came to these 3 children that they started looking after, they were told that it was because it wasn't the right cultural match when they found out they were UKIP members. Now, these children, they started looking after them in September. It was a baby girl, a little boy and an older sister. We're told that they came from a troubled family and that they were from an ethnic minority background. But about 8 weeks after the couple taking on these children, social services turned up unannounced in a way, saying that they'd had an anonymous tip-off that this couple were members of UKIP. And when the couple asked, well, what's that got to do with us fostering these children? They said, well, it's because UKIP has racist policies. The couple were completely dumbfounded by this. They said that if they knew that being a member of UKIP would have these connotations, then they wouldn't have signed up to the party. Now, this morning we have had a statement from UKIP leader Nigel Farage, who unsurprisingly is coming out in support of these foster parents, saying the council and the panel clearly have no understanding of UKIP and by their actions clearly no desire to know. To take children out of a safe family environment for such false reasons means that they are failing in their role. Rotherham Council very clearly in their statement were saying that they took very careful consideration before removing these children. However, foster charities today are saying that this really doesn't make sense. Why should a person's links to a mainstream political party have anything to do with children being put into a safe and friendly family environment? And certainly reading the article in the newspaper, this couple have been left totally devastated by this. 1 minute they were looking after that baby girl, the next minute they're left with an empty cot.
OK, Rhiannon, thank you. And
our Conservative estimate is that at least 1,400 individual children in Rotherham were victims of sexual exploitation over the 16 years. By victims, we are not talking about children who were at risk of sexual exploitation, who were friendly with victims, or who moved in the same circle. The 1,400 victims are those who had actually experienced sexual exploitation, as I have just defined it. We estimate that 1/3 of them were already known to services on account of neglect or child protection. It is hard to describe the appalling nature of the abuse the child victims suffered. They were raped by multiple perpetrators. They were trafficked to other towns and cities in the north of England. They were abducted, beaten and intimidated. There were examples of children being doused with petrol and threatened with being set alight. They were threatened with guns, made to witness brutally violent rapes and threatened they would be the next if they told anyone. Girls as young as 11 were raped by large numbers of male perpetrators. The detail of this information and the 15 pen pictures of exploited children, which we include in Chapter 5 of the report, were all taken from official records, files and minutes. And we could have described many other children whose experiences were just as awful.